few housekeeping things before we begin. First of all, we ask that you mute your microphone. This will keep background noise to a minimum. To make sure you mute your microphone when you're not speaking would be helpful. Also, submit all questions in the chat window. All presenters will have a moment for question answers, either at breaking points or toward the end of their presentation. Today we have with us Carla Garrett, who is the Early Childhood Program Specialist at the University of North Carolina Greensboro Serve Center, where she provides support, technical assistance, and policy guidance across early learning projects. Carla's focus on relationships and passion for appropriate practice contribute to her mission of providing the best possible experience for young children and their families. We'll let her introduce her co-presenters, and we'd like to remind you that closed captioning is available at the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, James, for that introduction and for being with us. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our session this morning, The Importance of Relationships for Young Children and Their Families. I really feel like Dr. Anderson set the tone for us so well in the opening session when he had his focus on relationships and talked about teaching being all about relationships, which is so true. I mean, everything is about relationships. Those connects to children, to teachers, administrators, as well as families. So we are so excited to share with you this morning. And I am delighted to introduce my colleague and friend, Ms. Tracy Cole. Tracy is the principal at East Carolina University's Community School, and the Community School is one of 9 laboratory schools in the University of North Carolina system. Tracy is a veteran educator who loves supporting the growth and development of children, their families, and the community school staff. So again, welcome. We are excited to have you with us this morning. And Tracy, would you like to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. It is certainly a pleasure to share with you today, and we look forward to talking about the importance of relationships for young children and their families and answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tracy. So as we get started this morning, I'm going to share a bit about our early learning project at the Serve Center at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and kind of set the stage around our work and writing a white paper around equitable access to high quality early learning environments for young children and their families, and with a particular focus on the relationships and the relatedness piece, which will lead so well into Tracy being able to share and to really highlight her work at ECU Community School in Greenville, North Carolina. So I think she will be the star of the show, and you will love to hear about her connections and the community she's been able to build with families as well as community partners. So without further ado, let's get started. So first of all, just a bit about the Serve Center at UNCG. So you'll see on the screen that we conduct research and evaluation, we provide technical assistance, we provide support for state education agencies, LEAs, as well as schools, to really focus on school improvement and educational outcomes. You'll also see that we host the Region 6 Comprehensive Center. We have a grant from the Department of Education for a number of projects, one of those being the early learning project that we'll talk about today. We also house the National Center for Homeless Education, as well as the North Carolina Homeless Education Program and Foster Program. So a number of projects. I'm still learning a lot of the pieces, but really providing support for preschool through grade 12. So to begin with, again, a bit about the early learning project at Serve. So when we started this work, we really had leadership give us an opportunity and a gift to have some time to think about early childhood and what we would do if we were given the opportunity to really think about how to support SEAs and LEAs and schools, and what would we do. So pulling together a group of folks to think about that particular piece and what would be important. So how do you really focus on high quality early learning environments, those relationships, and equitable access, particularly for students that are overburdened and under-resourced? And again, we heard much about that from our previous session with Dr. Anderson. So again, that particular theme continues here. And the things that we're going to talk about certainly apply to all children, but in particular, those children that are overburdened and under-resourced. So as we got together at Serve to think about what we should do for a project, and pulling together some folks from preschool, from the early grades, from teachers, administrators, and having all those folks really think about what we should do and asking the hard questions, and having Tracy, Ms. Cole, involved with us from the very beginning about what this work should look like and what it should entail. As we were thinking about our project, the what, why, and how, we of course wanted to include research, what we know is best about young children, what we've known is best for years, and really thinking about the pandemic as an opportunity to reset, to hit this lever of the notion of resetting, and to think about how do we go back and use all these things that we know is appropriate for young children and their families. How do we really do that from preschool through the early grades? And how do we focus on providing a high quality professional development initiative? We want to develop relationships with folks, to really think about developing resources, make sure we're listening to the voices of all those folks at the local levels, and then providing support. So lots of pieces. We're going to choose one particular piece of that project to focus on today, which we think is really connected to the relationships with children and families. The next slide is just a list of folks that we pulled together to work on this particular project, which I've listed again and mentioned that included preschool, the early grades, and you'll see Ms. Cole's name there on the list as well as part of our collaborative group. So again, one piece that we decided to focus on as part of the project was developing an early learning white paper and including recommendations for young children and their families. So the title of that ended up being Children Come First, Ensuring School Policies, Practices, and Strategies Lead to Positive Third Grade Outcomes, something that we all want to focus on and we all know is important. At the same time, we really know that we've got to focus on this equity piece and that it is applied from the beginning, that we are sure we're not providing a one size fits all, and that we're really differentiating and we are thinking about what children and families need so that we can provide those individualized services to make sure that school is a place where children find themselves smart, capable, and know that they belong, which is really the basis and the foundation for those important, consistent relationships that we need to develop with children as well as their families. So in the white paper, I'm just going to mention the sections, and there'll be a link at the end of the PowerPoint presentation so that you can go to our website and you can have access to the entire document. We include the why. So why is it important? That's always a focus in terms of should we focus on this work and why should we give it this attention that it needs? Of course, the brain research, again, we've known the brain research for a long time. And what would happen if we really focus on what we know to be true from the research? There are guidelines there. We're really going to focus on this presentation more on this frame and the research and the practice, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. And then, of course, I'll give you the list of the recommendations. So we're excited about this work. And again, want to pull out this small piece to talk about today as we focus on this particular piece and move forward. So again, the purpose and the why of the white paper: ensuring the equitable student access to high quality early learning environments, making sure we're focusing on the research as well as the data. And this third one here, providing innovative approaches for working with young children, particularly as a result of the pandemic. So that includes children and their families, and not just doing the same old things that we've been doing for this last several years. Again, using the pandemic to reset and to think about how we should move forward. When I think about children and families, and I think about how many children have been home for so long, basic needs, and they're listed there on the screen for you. So one is relatedness, one is competency, and one is autonomy. So what are those and what do they mean? So relatedness is really thinking about connection to others. It's thinking about relationships and a sense of belonging. So think about children coming into school and families coming into school. They need to feel like they're connected to folks. I mean, a lot of you do home visits, which I think is so important and really helps set that tone and get folks connected, and having educators go into the homes of young children and families to really make those connections, especially initially. And when children and families getting to school, making it comfortable and really making them feel like they're belonging and that they have a place there. The next one is competency. So that is really about being connected and thinking about achievement around skills, around knowledge. It's mastering things and having the opportunities to be able to master particular tasks and to be able to make choices about that. Autonomy is really having that belief or that sense that you have control over your life, that you have control over your actions. And again, as I mentioned before, able to make those choices. So those three are super important in terms of thinking about your relationships with those children and families. And I will mention, if something is not going quite right or quite as you want it to, I think you could kind of take a step back and really focus on one of those three and say, okay, is something missing from one of these? Are there some relationships that are missing, some connections? Does the child and the family feel like they have a place here? For competency, do we make children and families feel like they have the ability to achieve? Do we give them feedback when things are attempted? And the autonomy, do we give them the space to make those choices? Do we just tell families, okay, you can come on this day at this time and this is it? Or do we have more of an open door policy where they're able to make choices about fitting their particular talents and their skills with particular activities at school where they can succeed? So all of those are important. And if you'll notice, we're kind of hitting on a particular theme, that the same things are true for children are true for adults, the adults being the educators as well as the families, which puts us right into this notion on the next screen around parallel process. So what is parallel process? It is really thinking about the conditions that are true for one group are the same conditions that are true for another, or that are already developed or aligned there. So again, what we know about young children is the same thing that's true for adults, for educators, as well as families. So when we think about relatedness, autonomy, and competence, as I mentioned before, it's important to think about how those pieces fit in for all. So I'm going to give you an example. If we think about the pandemic and how hard that was, and all the trauma that was experienced in homes, and not just the homes of our children and families, but the homes of our educators, for our teachers, for our principals, central office, all of our folks. We all experience some trauma, even more so for those overburdened and under-resourced. And then we had this time of, okay, time to go back to school. So we thought last year would be, okay, we're back to normal. Things are okay now. Well, what I heard from educators is that it was far from normal last year. It was not this typical kind of year, and it was really challenging and one of the most difficult years ever. And I think as we focus on that, it's important to think about children and families as they come back to school, children walking in the door, and many of them experiencing trauma and the social emotional needs that those young children have. So imagine kindergarten children walking in. They've had limited to no school experience. And it makes me think back again to Dr. Anderson. If we have kindergarten children walk in and expect them to sit at tables with worksheets and sit quietly, there's no opportunity for those children to do the three things that we just talked about: the relatedness, the competence, and the autonomy. There's no opportunity to build relationships. There's no opportunity to focus on the whole child and to really focus on the social emotional pieces. And those children have a story to tell, and we have got to listen to that and focus on first things first. The same is true for the social emotional pieces for adults. In my work with teachers, as well as principals and central office folks, what I continue to hear from them is that they also had social emotional needs. So it's important, for example, as we recognize that for teachers, if you're principals, to kind of take a step back, or directors, and say, okay, how can I support these adults? How can I provide opportunities in staff meetings and professional development to let them connect with others, to build relationships, for them to be able to tell their stories, and that we acknowledge this is hard, this is tough, it's hard work. And how do we wrap our arms around them so that they feel that relatedness, competency, and autonomy, and so on and so forth. The same is true for families. So as educators, how do we focus on that for the families that are coming in? Are we recognizing that they've had trauma? Are we giving them opportunities to connect with others, to connect with us, to connect with families? Are we listening to their stories? So I'm hoping this is kind of making sense around the parallel process piece. Again, that what's true for one group is true for another, and that includes children as well as the adults. So there are a few bullets there on the screen that I'll highlight. So the environment that supports growth for adults and children alike is one in which they feel belong, safe, and valued, which we talked about. Competence and autonomy develop through relationships built on trust and respect. So again, the relationships piece is certainly key. And then finally, excellence is believed possible for each individual and supported. And again, that's true for children, it's true for the adults, it's true for the educators as well as the families. And I think this is really helping us move right forward into this piece with Ms. Kohler. She's going to share. I'm just going to show quickly a list of the recommendations from the white paper. We're focusing and honing in again on this piece about relatedness and parallel process. Again, you'll see the equity pieces there and a list of the recommendations, but I just wanted to show them to you so you can have time later to go back and take a deep dive into the early learning recommendations via the white paper. Now we're just going to move right into this section with the amazing Ms. Tracy Cole, again, who's the principal at ECU Community School in North Carolina. And I'm excited for her to share what these recommendations look like, what the parallel process looks like, and the community she's been able to build around these relationships with young children, as well as her staff, as well as the families and the community. So over to you, Ms. Cole.
All right. Thank you, Carla, and good morning again. It is my pleasure to share with you about ECU Community School and the work that we're doing in Greenville, North Carolina. Next slide, please. So what does it look like in our school when we say children come first? Next slide. So at the community school, we are actually one of 9 laboratory schools in the UNC system. Back in 2017, East Carolina University opened an elementary lab school that's focused on 3 major prongs. The first prong is student growth and development. When you look at legislation, our school, we are designed to work with students who are either A, they're identified as academically at risk, or B, they're zoned to attend a low-performing school under North Carolina's accountability model. So the school started in 2017-18 with grades 2, 3, and 4. Since that time, we've expanded to be grades K through 5, and our theme is moving from success to significance. Next slide, please. When we look at the demographics of the community school, 95% of the students transferred from a low-performing school. 95% of our students are considered academically at risk. 88% of our students live at or below the poverty level, and 28% of our children receive special education services. We actually have a relationship with the Marriage and Family Therapy Department at East Carolina University. And with this department, we administer what's called a biopsychosocial screener. This screener is given to our families, and it asks some very personal questions, such as, is food insecurity a concern? Do you have difficulty finding housing? Has your child experienced an adverse childhood experience, such as death of a parent, incarceration of a parent, any physical abuse or sexual abuse? When we did this survey, and again, right before the pandemic, 82% of our children, and we call them scholars, have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. 26% of our children have experienced 4 or more ACEs. And again, this was before the pandemic. So you can imagine what this number looks like now with all that we've been through since the pandemic started. Next slide, please. When it comes to relatedness, we believe that, as Carla said, everyone has to feel connected in our building. For our children, it's greeting them when they come to campus in the morning. We have faculty and staff members strategically placed throughout the campus, whether it's the car rider line, the van line, the bus rider line, and we greet students. And we can tell right from those morning greetings about what the day may look like. And when we notice those things, we are able to touch base with employees who can help support students and work through any concerns and possibly remove any barriers that may come into place. For example, we have students who may have gotten up very quickly and they didn't have a chance to freshen up in the morning. So we've got a shower on campus and personal hygiene materials and clean clothes so that they can come in and freshen up and be ready for the day. We also talk with our students and families about our pirate expectations. We talk about in the building, there are certain things that you are expected to do. For example, there are certain things that you do on the playground, or certain things in the cafeteria, or certain things in the restroom. We model those expectations. We talk about what we do when children meet or exceed those expectations. We also talk about what happens when you don't meet those expectations and why it is important that we work together as a family. With our children, we have what's called a support group. We have an integrated health collaborative team. That's what IHC stands for. We have a full-time school counselor, full-time school social worker. We are in the process of hiring a full-time school nurse and a director of integrated health. Just to give you an idea, we have approximately 123 children in our program. So to have a full-time school social worker and a full-time school counselor is amazing, because sometimes with numbers, they are shared among campuses. We also have a partnership with the psychology division at ECU. They run groups with our children where they talk about self-regulation. And again, the partnership with the marriage and family therapy department. They administer that biopsychosocial screener. We get the results from the screener, and we are able to share resources with our families to help meet the needs. So for our children, for our teachers, when you come to the community school, before you work with the first child, we have a week-long orientation where we talk about the different facets of our school. Well, we take a community tour so that you can see where our children live and where they are coming to us from. We also give you some planning time so that when you start working with children, you are prepared. You know our children's story, you know our family story, you know our school story. Our teachers also have extensive professional development on adverse childhood experiences. And we have monthly faculty and staff support group meetings where we talk about what's going well, what's not going well, what steps do we need to take to improve, how are you feeling about certain concepts or projects within our building. So again, we look out for our teachers. As an administrator, I make time to talk with the children and staff every day, whether it's in the hallway, during breakfast, lunch, classroom visits, and recess. I want them to know I see you, and I'm here to make sure that you can do and be the very best person that you can be. I participate in professional development with faculty and staff members. I sit side by side with them so that I am seeing and hearing what they're hearing, and I can work to put supports and resources in place for successful implementation. I also work with university and community partners to help meet scholars' needs. For example, Beast Philanthropy does a bi-weekly food distribution for us. Constant communication with this organization. They provide fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, dairy products, canned products for our families so that they have food. Again, you heard me mention the marriage and family therapy division. They provide individual and family counseling sessions right here on campus. So it's, as an administrator, it's important for me to be connected to the learning community. And for our families, from the very beginning, we share with our families that they are the experts on their children. It will take all of us working together to meet their needs. Our families receive positive personal contact at the beginning of the year and throughout the school year. Our teachers make a point to call at least 3 or 4 parents or 3 or 4 guardians a week to say, let me tell you about what I saw with your child, and this was completely amazing. Families appreciate those phone calls. They also appreciate our visits home if we can't reach them by telephone number. We also work with our families, again, with the administration of that screener, and we align resources based on those screening results. And we work to meet our families' basic needs for food, shelter, and clothing. Our school social worker works with various agencies to help make sure our families have a place to stay. Again, everyone is important at the community school. And when we work to remove those barriers, learning takes place. Next slide, please. So in terms of our children, they come to school. Our children come to school. Our daily attendance rate is 90%. And when we have family engagement events, 75% to 80% of our families take place, whether it's parent conferences, IEP meetings, family nights. We make sure we give them advance notice. And if they need assistance getting to campus, we are able to help them because, again, families are an integral part of the process. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the family engagement events that we've had over the years. We had Falling in Love with Learning Night. We had Greenville Family Health Night, where we partnered with local agencies to check blood pressures of our parents, our adults, that is. We talked about setting health goals, Medicaid enrollment. We also talked about healthy eating. You'll also see that we had grocery store tours where we actually walk families through the grocery store and they learn to pick out the healthiest items. Families really appreciate that because stores are set up in a particular manner. We have STEM night. This is a partnership with the Science Education Department where the pre-service teachers come in and they set up stations and children and their families have a chance to take part in hands-on learning. Next slide, please. In the midst of the pandemic, we continued our family engagement. We had drive-by events such as our Kids Read Now program, in which every student was given 9 books of quality literature of their choice. We also had virtual parent training sessions. This was sponsored by the Teddy Bear Advocacy Center out of the Brody School of Medicine. We had Connected Parents, Connected Children, and this session was designed to give families tools and strategies to help decrease burnout and enhance the adult-child connection. This was done virtually. We also had virtual awards programs where we celebrated the accomplishments of our scholars, our faculty staff, and our families. So again, even during the midst of the pandemic, we continued with our family engagement. Next slide, please. So here's a bit. This is a video about our school. It's a short video. It's about 3 minutes, but I invite you to focus on one of our parents, Ms. Michelle Harris, and her child, Harlem Holly, as they talk about their experience and the community school and the relatedness that they experienced while they were here.
Has several layers, right?
When the children come to the community school, first and foremost, they are loved.
It is a unique environment. I absolutely love it.
The possibilities really are limitless for the children here at this school. They receive that one-on-one attention to be able to really develop and cultivate their minds.
It's changed me a lot.
My son's name is Harlem Holly. He graduated last year from ECU Community School.
The community school has grades kindergarten through 5.
I really didn't know too much about ECU Community School until I had spoken with the principal, Ms. Cole, because I thought it was like a private school.
This is a public school.
This is a partnership between ECU and Pitt County Schools, so all of our scholars and their families have access to resources from the university for free.
We have smaller class sizes that allows them to get that one-on-one attention and hopefully not allow them to fall through the cracks.
The teachers here are at the forefront of best teaching practices.
Not everybody's on the same level, so it's great when you can kind of scaffold your teaching and use different techniques that you know work for the students.
It definitely made me feel great to know that it was a group of people that actually took the one-on-one time that was needed for my child in order for him to flourish.
You will also be surrounded with a ton of resources from ECU. For example, our students have a laptop that they can utilize for online instruction.
Our scholars are getting access to opportunities students don't get anywhere else.
The support all across the university, whether it's the Brody School of Medicine, the dental school, the marriage and family therapy department, the athletic department, the elementary education middle grades department, the literacy education department.
They actually showed that they cared, not only for my child, but for me as well.
I work with the family as a whole, maybe work with the mother or father If it benefits that child, then that's what we do. And that's one of the aspects that I love here about the community school is that, yes, academics are important, but that's not the sole purpose that we're here.
They have really left a big impact on him. And it means a lot to me being a single parent to know that my child has somebody else to look up to other than me. The male teachers took my son under their wing.
To be in this position, it's not like a superstar position, but the scholars actually look up to you in this position because they don't get some of the things that they get here at home.
Good morning, third graders. Good morning, all righty.
We call them scholars because we want them to see themselves that way. Sometimes when things are difficult, we'll tell the children, okay, well, we tried it one way, now let's try it the way other college students do it. And you can almost see the self-esteem, like, oh, that's right, I'm part of ECU.
We are seeing tremendous growth of our children. Results from North Carolina's testing and accountability, our school has met expected growth 2 years in a row.
And just seeing the amount of growth that they've had is just a great experience.
They are phenomenal. They go above and beyond. They really take the time that's needed to nurture and teach each child.
They really looked out for me.
All they need is a chance, a little bit of love and consistency, and they'll go a long way.
Thank you. So you had a chance to hear from a family about their experience at the community school. And it is our prayer that the experience that you heard this family, Ms. Harris, share is the experience for every family that comes and walks our hallway. The work that we do, it involves a lot of community engagement. On the far left-hand side, you'll see a shot from the Heart Institute at ECU. That was the former dean of the Brody School of Medicine. They had a Rise Up conference and they invited our children to participate. And they had a chance to interact with medical students and ask questions. The top photo is from the Country Doctor Museum. The museum actually came to us and provided hands-on experiences for our children. We partner with the dental school. They talk about proper brushing and flossing techniques with our children, and each child receives a personal toothbrushing kit. The ECU Police Department walk our children to neighborhoods close to the school at the end of the school day. And they also sponsored a bicycle safety program for our children. And then on the far right side of the screen, you'll see one of our scholars connecting with a resident at a skilled nursing facility. We actually go to the facility, we read with the residents, we share with them, and again, establishing connections and love for others. That is a key component for our school. Next slide, please. When you look at our discipline data, and I've started in 2018 because this was the year that I started at the community school. If you will notice a trend over the years, pretty much our discipline has declined from 2018 to 2019. In 2021-22, we did experience a little uptick, but out of school suspensions, but that's still considerably lower than where we started in 2018-19. And we attribute that to teaching our children expectations and making sure that our children, their parents, and our faculty staff know that they are loved and appreciated and they belong at the community school. Next slide, please. Along with establishing this culture of high expectations, you'll see our academic growth over the years. So for the 17-18 school year, when the school first opened, 0% of our students passed the reading and math test. We met expected growth, but we had a negative growth index. In the 18-19 school year, 6 8/10% of our students passed the test. We met expected growth, but our growth index went from being negative to being positive. And had it been 2.0 or higher, we would have made high growth. So we were 0.03 for making high growth. In the 19-20 school year, that's when COVID hit, so no state tests were administered. In the 2021 school year, the growth status was not calculated. However, the number of students who passed the reading and math test improved from 6.8% to 14%. And this school year that we just finished, 21-22, we met expected growth and our reading and math proficiency increased to 43.3%. So even during the midst of the pandemic, we are on a positive trajectory for our students growing as well as passing North Carolina's standardized test. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, I'll actually share work from one of our scholars. This young man started out in kindergarten. His name is Gianni. He painted something for me. He said, Miss Cole, I painted this for you. I want you to hang it in your office. And when I got it, I read it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm saying to myself, what does it say? And so I said, Gianni, read it to me. And he looked at me like, you can't read? So I said, no, buddy, I want you to read it to me. And he said, it says the principal. I said, oh yes, I see the principal. And I dated this September 2018. Next slide, please. So Gianni came back to me in October with this, and it says principal. Next slide. At the end of October, Gianni came back. Now he's going from right to left, but it says, I like the principal. Next slide, please. And Christmas around in December, Gianni gave me, Santa is giving the principal a present. Santa is nice. Now this is the same child in kindergarten. Next slide. In February window, the kindergarten scholars were studying Chinese New Year. And so that's prompted this. Miss Cole is training in Kung Fu. She is at the Great Wall of China. She is looking for a dragon. This was actually February 2019. Next slide, please. This is Gianni at the end of the school year, at the end of his kindergarten year. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Miss Cole. She saw a tiger and she ran away. Then she came up with a plan to catch the tiger. She put some food out for the tiger and hid behind a rock. When the tiger came, she jumped out and tied him up with the rope. She took him to the zoo and she named him Petey. Next slide. So you will see Gianni at the beginning of kindergarten and Gianni at the end of kindergarten. Next slide. A tremendous amount of growth. We've gone from letters to sentences to stories that have a problem. I'm going to fast forward. This is Gianni in second grade. Dear Miss Cole, I've been reading chapter books in second grade. My favorite book is Dog Man because Petey is funny and has a clone. Do you like Dog Man books? Are you doing great? I'm doing great because I'm the smartest. What is your favorite color? Mine is blue. Love, Gianni. And then I'm going to backtrack, next slide, to his first grade year because this captures who we are at the community school. I have a dream. My dream is to go to college and to make good grades. I want to be like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to change the world. I want to help others. I want to make the world a better place. I want to be a minister because I can help people. I can spread kindness to come to the world. I can fight with words, not fight with hands. I can stop people from fighting others. I want to do good things. You can change the world too. And this captures who we are at the community school. Next slide.
Just so you know, you have about 10 minutes left.
Thank you.
So
Again,
we'll need 5 for questions.
All right. Again, ECU's community school is a place for learning and a place for love. And if you are ever in Greenville, North Carolina, we invite you to set up a time to visit.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cole. I am always amazed every time I hear your story and the great leadership that you provide at ECU Community School, and all those connections around community and the relationships are just amazing with children as well as your staff and the families and community partners. So we wanted to just take a minute and to let you all there that are participating think about what we've shared with you today. And as you leave here and think about next steps, are there some strategies, are there some ideas or thoughts that you have that you might plan to implement within your school or your classroom, and what that looks like? So I'm wondering if you might share that in the chat box. Just take just a moment and think about that, and then we will wrap up. So you can share in the chat box. And I'm not sure, can folks unmute? Are participants able to unmute, or they just need to type in the chat box? Okay, here we go. Let's see, here's one idea to think about, making sure everyone feels connected and everyone is in all caps. Absolutely. So thinking about those connections throughout the school and the classroom environments for sure. Thank you, Sharina. Anybody else? This gets kind of challenging. So these are the moments when I wish we were all face to face in a room and able to kind of talk in small groups and share. So just continue to kind of think about what you might take away and what you might do back in your classrooms, in your schools. And gosh, Miss Cole is so generous in extending that invitation to anyone who might want to come visit her school. And Greenville, North Carolina is not too awfully far from South Carolina, from the South Carolina line. So hopefully, if any of you are interested, you could contact her and schedule a visit. All right, let's see. Jessica just posted in the chat box, utilizing the universal basic needs theory and relating it to all of our practices. Absolutely. Thinking about those pieces and then when something's not quite right, trying to figure that piece out. And then thinking back to what Pamela says, reverting back to what I learned early on, taking care of the basic needs that hinder learning, food, shelter, and clothing. It's like first things first. Teresa says, inviting parents to come in and help, not just helping them understand curriculum, but helping them with their health. What a great connection to show you care about the whole family. Absolutely, Ms. Cole, and all the services that you have there. I've actually been to our school to visit and seen all those things in place and in action, and it is amazing to see. So I would certainly invite you guys to do that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. And again, just to reiterate, relationships truly are the key to this work and thinking about how to provide those best possible environments, equitable access to high quality early learning environments, and making those connects with all of the folks involved. And again, why do we do this? Of course, it's all for the children and thinking about the best possible outcomes and the best possible experiences. This is a slide that gives a link to the white paper that we mentioned earlier. The document in the middle is an executive summary of that white paper. And then there's one more document at this point that's another resource about using pandemic relief funds to support early childhood. These are all available through the Serve Center at the Region 6 Comprehensive Center. And there's a link here to get you to that spot, or you can Google the Region 6 Comprehensive Center and hit resources, and there's an early childhood tab there. And then to wrap up, there's Tracy's information. Her email is listed as principal of ECU Community School, Cole T18 at ecu.edu. Mine is there as well, cgarrett@serve.org. So we are finished. So if there are questions, we are happy to entertain those. And again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are passionate about this work and appreciate your time to help us think through these particular pieces and the importance of relationships. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.